both of us are trying to solve the same problem.
Not to say that there's anything wrong with medical intervention.
And I've realized that a band-aid approach may not always work. In some cases, yeah, maybe where it's necessary.
So sustainability is important, and doing things that you feel comfortable with doing long term.
Your early years, how did you move to India?
Of course.
Where did you grow up? Because you've grown up in a lot of different places.
Yes.
You've studied in US.
So when I started working, I had a 9-to-5 job, and I was like, I can do whatever I want after 5 o'clock.
I think as Indians, we also consume a lot of milk, which has a lot, I think, testosterone or oxytocin. Either of these is present.
Exactly. So not testosterone, but yes, and estrogen, right? So
yes.
So cows are often fed or injected with hormones in order to grow big, in order to produce a lot of milk. And these hormones end up in the milk as well. And so if we consume poor quality milk, then we are introducing those into our body. Now, I don't want to shun milk, right? I think milk is a very nutritious food, and it is something that and maybe this is controversial, right? In today's day and age when everyone's talking about this diet or going gluten-free, dairy-free. But honestly, I'm big on sustainability. So I want to rather educate people on how to get the best quality food versus cutting out foods and food groups from their diet, right?
Absolutely.
So when it comes to dairy, look for grass-fed A2 organic dairy, okay? And try and source that. If you want to have your cup of coffee every day or your cup of tea, you want to have curd. These are integral parts of our Indian food, right? Our Indian culture. So denying that and saying, well, I have PCOS, I can't have dairy, I can't eat with my family, I can't eat the same foods, it just doesn't make sense. That's not sustainable, right?
Yeah, I feel like when you talk about gluten-free specifically, I think Indian food has a lot of options, especially like when I was living in Bangalore. Gluten-free was one of the easiest things to find. Rice is gluten-free.
Yes.
I used to have akki roti for breakfast, which is gluten-free. Dosa is gluten-free. What else? I'm trying to think of things. Idli is gluten-free.
Yeah, so a lot of South Indian food is gluten-free. But then in the north, there's a lot of roti, parantha, naan. There's all of these,
but then you can use millets.
You can change it up. Yeah.
So what I do at home is I take ragi atta and I mix it with my normal chakki ka atta that we get at home, and I make a mix, and it's a really nice yum roti and my entire family has it now, because ragi is also more nutritional than the normal atta that we use, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can make slight changes in your diet and have a really nice wholesome meal at home. I don't see any. I think I'm growing really old. Okay? Like yesterday, I didn't want to eat at McDonald's because I was like unhealthy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of maturing, right? And that's part of turning, like, you're not 30 yet, but you're close to 30.
Yeah.
And you've probably seen that your body is a little bit slowing down. Things, your body's not able to bounce back as easily.
Roti. That's very I don't think my 15-year-old self would agree, because I was big on parathas. And I still love my parathas. I have a paneer paratha every Sunday.
Yeah.
And why not, right? Like, paneer is giving you protein.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of, carbs, so what? Yeah. And then there's good fats, ghee.
Yeah.
Again, we were talking about, what we eat is not the same. I think there was a point when in India, a lot of households switched to refined oil.
Correct.
Which is also, it's very high in omega-6, right? Which causes inflammation in body.
So that happened all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So industrial oils, if you even, look up how they are made, these refined oils, whether it's sunflower, canola, grapeseed, if you look how they're made, it's actually a very disgusting process, because these oils are byproducts of other industrial processes. So these byproducts, it's like waste, right? And it's very cheap.
Yeah.
And for these reasons, it's now become very popular to use these in foods. And they are polyunsaturated fatty acids, right? PUFAs for short.
Yeah.
And they cause inflammation. They are also able to mimic estrogen molecules. So they can fit in estrogen receptors, right? Within them they have molecules that can fit within estrogen receptors and cause estrogen dominance, right? So that's another issue in driving PCOS, is that a lot of the chemicals, flame retardants, refined oils, they have these estrogen lookalike molecules which can fit into receptors. So even if you are not, you don't have high estrogen in your body naturally, these are molecules that enter your system and they persist, right? And they cause estrogen dominant symptoms, right? And cause hormone imbalance. So inflammation, estrogen dominant, estrogen mimicking molecules in these refined oils. But it's so easy to make a simple switch, right? And this is the thing with nutrition. You will find one article that will tell you that saturated fat is great for you. You'll find another article that will tell you it's the worst thing possible, right? Do your research. Really get into it and really understand, is saturated fat really bad for us? Like, is that really the truth? And is that really what causes cholesterol or heart disease? I'll leave the viewer to sort of navigate them for that for themselves. But in terms of switching from PUFAs to saturated fatty sources like ghee, butter, olive oil, coconut oil, even avocado oil, but I think that's more difficult and it's more expensive.
Yeah.
Difficult to get over here, and it's more expensive. But I would say ghee, right? Ghee is like, it's so integral to our culture.
Yeah.
There's a reason
I remember
why we
this
consume
time
it.
when my mom was like, no, we will not have ghee, we'll have olive oil. And I was like, bro, olive oil is a salad oil.
Yeah, that's the thing with olive oil. See, when olive oil is heated to very high temperatures, then it starts to become like a PUFA, right? Like a canola oil. So that's the issue. Olive oil, it has the most benefits when you consume it raw, if you're consuming it in a salad like that.
Yeah. So now in my house we mostly use ghee,
Mm-hmm.
or we have rice bran for some. Oh no, I think my mom's gone back to mustard oil too.
Okay. So honestly, any oil that is from a seed is a polyunsaturated fatty
that's
acid.
what I've also heard.
Yes.
But Punjabis predominantly have mustard oil,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
I think in South they use peanut oil.
Yeah.
Or groundnut oil.
Yeah.
In Punjab they use sarson ka tel is what we call it.
Right.
And it's used. Yeah.
So I think when it comes to, if you're going to use it, then to minimize the impact, look for cold pressed, right?
Yeah, we get cold pressed mustard oil.
Yeah, heating also causes free radicals to increase in the oil, right? So if it's gone through a very intense heating process to make it, if it's cold pressed, it hasn't gone through that process. So it's maintained some of its integrity, right?
Okay.
But otherwise, if it's gone through, a very intense heating process to extract the oil, then it's full of free radicals and oxidation and all of these things that
cause inflammation
in
in
our
body.
Right. Yeah.
So okay, let's talk about these oils. Which oils are good for cooking if you want to have good hormonal health? Ghee.
So my opinion, and based on my research, I'm going to say saturated fat, right? So ghee, butter, coconut oil.
Coconut
right?
oil.
But coconut oil does have a strong flavor, so some people may not like always cooking with it, right? But I know in some states, like in Kerala, coconut oil is big, and that's so all the food is.
I like banana chips.
Yeah,
and it's all fried in coconut oil.
Exactly.
So I love it.
Yeah. So coconut oil is great. So I think these are three that are these are good sources of fat for cooking, and to give you those healthy fats, and to not have, to prevent you from having inflammation from having refined oils. And it's a very easy switch to make, but it can have a very big impact.
I mean, Indians predominantly weren't using refined oil from the beginning, right? It just industrialization, it was cheaper. marketing was, I think, marketing, if you market a product well, I know it now because I work in marketing.
You're the pro at that.
Yeah, so now I know you can market good things, you can market bad things. Thankfully, I've only marketed good things so far.
Awesome.
So great. But you know how Indians used to eat earlier, right? I remember my grandfather used to say, have everything in small quantities. And I don't remember a day when he's not had meetha after his dinner. He would have a little good. Okay. And he would have all his meals were made in ghee. He didn't touch, he had 2 heart attacks and he was like, I'm not having refined oil because there was a lot of research at that point, right, saying that for heart patients refined oil is
healthy
better,
heart
a healthy
oils,
heart.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I think there's still, we might get sued after this.
We might get. I mean, see, that's the thing with nutrition. There's so much conflicting information out there, right? And it can be really difficult to navigate, and often it prevents us from even starting to make a change because we just don't know what to do. There's just so much information out there. So it's true. Like even the American food system, doctors still recommend, and I think it's probably the same here, that refined oils are heart healthy. Right? That's a recommendation that's still perpetuated. Now there are some other doctors who believe otherwise, right? So you really have to do your research and understand these things. And if you don't want to do the research, maybe try it out, right? And see if your body reacts differently or see what happens, right? There's no other way to do it. You just have to do it. You just have to try it out, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, go back to what you're doing. I mean, ultimately, your health is in your own hands, right?
Absolutely. Okay, coming back to the question that we skipped long ago. What are the 3 sustainable tips that you would give someone? We completely skipped that one.
We did. We did. So I think because insulin resistance is one of the major drivers of PCOS symptoms, I would say that we want to focus on that, right? And most likely, unless you specifically have like severe gut issues, then it's probably inflammation in your gut that's driving your PCOS symptoms. But for the majority of us who have PCOS, it is very much driven by insulin resistance, right? Especially in the early stages. So anything that you can do to help you manage that, to make your body more insulin sensitive, is going to have a very positive impact on your PCOS symptoms. Okay. So the first thing is really about managing that. I would say have a protein rich breakfast. Okay. Protein rich breakfast that starts your day off on a very positive note, that starts your hormones off, your metabolism off on a very positive note. And you'll see that it will encourage you to make healthier decisions around food throughout the day. It will also reduce your cravings. So have a protein and healthy fat rich breakfast, right? So I know a lot of India is vegetarian.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard for us to meet our protein requirement on a daily basis. And if you do eat eggs are a great option for breakfast. Chilla is actually
really nice.
It's good, right? It's besan, it's chickpea, it's protein, right? So that's a good option.
You can add a lot of vegetables to it. You can add some paneer to it.
You can add some paneer. If you do like to eat, let's say, oats, you can add a scoop of protein powder to it, right?
I love oats.
Yeah.
I add walnuts to it. I add almonds to it.
Add all the
pumpkin
nuts.
seeds.
And then for a boost of protein, add protein powder. Or add a collagen powder, right?
I love both.
Yeah, exactly. So there are many ways of getting protein, at least in your breakfast, right? So that would be one tip that I would give you. Another tip is, this is related to cortisol. So a lot of us have a habit of having coffee on an empty stomach. First thing in the morning, completely empty stomach. Some of us even have black coffee. So it's extremely caffeinated. I see that look on
I
your
used to
face.
do that in college. I used to do that in college.
Yeah, and it curbs our hunger. So we're like, then we don't have to think about breakfast. And I get it. I was there. I've been there. Anything that you have been and done, anyone, I have done it.
remember once I was having this cold brew in class, and my professor said, "Why don't you just start injecting yourself with caffeine? Why are you punishing yourself with this coffee?" And it was my third coffee for that day.
Oh my God. And cold brew is so caffeinated. It is so intense in caffeine. So having coffee on an empty stomach, that immediately switches on the stress response in your body. Cortisol is now coursing through your veins, and
you're rushing through the day.
Yeah, you're rushing through the day, and your hormones are already bad. Are already on a bad start for the day, right? So I'm not saying don't have your coffee. Have your coffee. Have it after a meal. Okay.
Yeah. But what about a bullet coffee? A lot of people have bullet coffee, They add ghee to or like butter to their coffee.
And that's great, but still have it after a meal, right?
Okay.
The point is that you don't want to be getting caffeine into your system on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
Right? Because the fat in the bulletproof coffee does allow for a slower release of caffeine, but still not
enough.
Not enough. Like you want to eat something, then have your bulletproof coffee or have your black coffee or have your Starbucks latte, whatever it is, right? But first have a protein-rich breakfast, and then after that have your caffeine, right?
And I think these tips apply to all women, not just
actually yes.
Yeah, it's
correct.
Because
it's not just PCOS.
Yeah, because anytime you have coffee on an empty stomach, it's going to slow your metabolism too, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, caffeine increases your metabolism, but temporarily.
Yeah.
Right? So it's going to increase it, and then it's just going to crash. So to avoid any increase and crash, whether it's in your blood sugar, whether it's in your cortisol, just don't have it on an empty stomach.
Whatever happened to gradually metabolizing stuff? Like, I don't think bodies do that anymore.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they know how to do that.
Yeah.
So those are two tips. Another tip would be, I guess, around exercise, right? Because usually when we are first diagnosed with PCOS, we're thinking about diet and exercise. So I've given you two quote-unquote diet tips, right? So let's talk about exercise. So I would say walking and yoga are really fantastic forms of movement. So if you're someone who hasn't ever really thought about exercising, think about yoga. Think about even going for a 15-minute walk. And I think we also have this very wrong perception about exercise, where we think exercise has to mean that it's very hard, it's very long, we're sweating, we're hyperventilating, then we can call it exercise.
Yeah, otherwise
it's just, but that's not true. A 15-minute walk can count as exercise. And to couple that with kind of those first two habits, incorporate a 15 to 20-minute walk after every meal.
That's a great tip.
Awesome. Yeah. So that in itself, just that one habit, even if you do nothing else, you don't change what you eat, but change when you have your coffee. Do that.
For sure. I've actually really reduced my coffee intake. On some days, I just don't have coffee, and I feel like I've achieved something. Like I got through the day without any caffeine.
That's a big achievement.
Yeah.
It's a big achievement, and it's going to have significant impacts on your hormonal health, right? I don't ever want to say to women that you just need to cut out coffee. Because again, is that sustainable? The minute they hear me say that, they're just going to be like, I'm not going to listen to what this woman has to say.
So the thing is, when you have such negative association with a particular food group, right, it's difficult to restrain then.
Yeah.
Like if someone tells me don't have sugar, I'm definitely going to crave for sugar. Like even if mentally I'm like, yeah, okay, it's not great for me, I'm not going to have it. Next morning, I don't know why, I'll just start craving for sugar. I'm like, I need a dairy milk.
And it's also that rebel within us, right? If someone tells us not, especially if it's our mom, not to do something, we're going to do that thing.
Yeah, some days my mom will be like, you've not exercised in a few days. And I'll be like, now I'm gonna not exercise for the next 3 days. Yeah, you wait.
Exactly. So incorporating that 15 to 20-minute walk after you've eaten a meal is just going to serve your blood sugar significantly.
Yeah.
It's going to allow your muscles to start removing that blood sugar out of your bloodstream. And even if you have insulin resistance, because your muscles are taking up that sugar, now that sugar is not going to be stored as fat. Right? So it allows for that balance to take place in your body.
So the key is to minimize insulin spikes.
Yes, the key is to minimize insulin spikes, exactly. And also blood glucose spikes, right? And they're both correlated. Yeah. So after you eat, you usually have a spike. Now, depending on what you eat, if you eat more protein and fat, your spike is going to be quite minimal.
Yeah.
But if you have a very high carb meal, your spike is going to be through the roof, right? So let's say you do have a high carb meal. I'm not saying don't have it. Go for a 30-minute walk. Maybe make it a 1-hour walk, depending on how much you ate, right? Yeah. And that's going to help to bring your blood glucose down. And you're not going to then have all the symptoms associated with having high blood glucose, high insulin, right? That come along with that.
And what should your plate look like? So I read this somewhere that you should first have your proteins. And then have your vegetables, which is fiber, and then have your carbs to minimize the spike.
Correct, yeah. So when it comes to your plate of food, it's very hard sometimes for us to think about so many different things, right? Yeah. It's not always possible for us to think about protein, vegetables, healthy fats, carbs, everything in one time. Sometimes we are able to do that, and then we can create a very balanced plate of food. But I would say a tip on what is going to be most impactful is really looking at that ratio between protein and carbohydrates on your plate, right? So you want that ratio to be somewhat similar. You want your amount of protein to be somewhat similar to the amount of carbs, because protein and carbs balance out blood sugar together. If you're only eating carbs, your blood sugar is through the roof. If you're only eating protein, your blood sugar is actually going to start to decline, like go negative. When you eat them together, your blood sugar becomes more stable, more balanced, right? So whenever you want to have your carbs, have them, enjoy them. Try to see how you can minimize the impact of them, either by doing a walk after your meal or trying to balance out your protein with the carbs that you're having.
That's actually a very helpful tip, because we forget that there's science to everything, right? You just need to do a little more research, understand your body better. And once you understand your body, you know how things work. You can just lose weight easily. You can balance your hormones. You don't, like, while intuitively it seems like, oh, running 20 kilometers a day will help you lose weight. It may not.
Yeah.
Or cutting out carbs completely from your meal will help you lose weight. No, that's not sustainable. First of all, your body cannot survive without carbs.
Yeah, and not to say that you won't lose weight. For sure. If you don't eat carbs, you're probably going to lose weight, and pretty quickly. But is that sustainable, right? And is that sustainable even for you in terms of, are you going to be able to continue on not eating carbs? Because the minute you eat carbs, that weight is coming back.
It's coming back. Plus, how do you survive without carbs, right? Because it's food for your brain. Like, I cannot imagine not eating carbs.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a time when they used to say, like, oh, don't eat carbs for dinner, or don't eat carbs for this meal and that meal. So that, like, what? But, women who have PCOS can work with different healthcare professionals. So let's talk about how a PCOS and fertility coach is different from a nutritionist or a personal trainer. Or what's your approach to this?
Yeah, so a PCOS coach is, one way I like to describe it is that when you're working with, let's say, a therapist, right? They are helping you focus on your past and focus on dealing with whatever negative things happened in your past, dealing with trauma, etc. A coach is really helping you work on your future, right? And you have all different types of coach, right? It can be a health coach, it can be a life coach, it can be a finance coach, all sorts of coaches, right? But coaches basically are helping you work on your future goals, right? So me as a PCOS and fertility coach, I'm helping you work on specifically your health goals that are around managing PCOS or restoring fertility, right? So, a nutritionist, if when you seek guidance from a nutritionist, they might give you a diet plan. They hand you a diet plan and they say, now eat in this way, right? And they might give you some other tips on lifestyle changes you can make. But that one interaction, and oftentimes that's it, right? Sometimes you have a little bit of communication on WhatsApp here and there, and you get support through that. As a PCOS health coach, I would never just hand someone a diet plan and say, here, eat in this way, right? My fundamental is all about sustainability. So by me handing you a diet plan and saying, eat in this way, is that going to be sustainable for you? Right? So the way that I approach diet is I try to get an in-depth understanding of how you currently eat right now, when you eat, what you eat. And with that understanding, I can then see where we can make small changes within the context of the way that you already eat that are going to have a big impact, but are not going to be very hard for you to implement, right? So, because it's all about sustainability, it's all about building small habits that have a big impact and that you can be consistent with. Right?
Yeah.
So that's not only in terms of diet, that's also in terms of movement, right? So as a holistic health coach, I'm looking at nutrition, movement, sleep, supplementation, stress management, and mindset and even mental health, right? All of these things are important when you're trying to address, especially something like PCOS.
Yeah.
Because PCOS, you may have noticed that there's so many women you know who have PCOS, but they might not all look the same. They might not have the same symptoms. And this means that they have different root causes. They have different things that are driving their PCOS symptoms, right? So if you are someone whose PCOS symptoms are driven by stress, you might have a perfect diet and perfect exercise regimen. But if you're not addressing stress, you're not going to improve your PCOS.
Yeah.
Right? If your PCOS is due to really poor sleep habits, like we don't understand how important sleep is. Sleep is often overlooked.
Yeah. Even for insulin resistance.
Right? You're not going to be able to address your PCOS symptoms until you address the sleep aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's what I do as a PCOS coach, helping you make small changes in your diet, in your lifestyle, and trying to address the root cause of what is driving your symptoms. For a lot of us, it could even be based on, something that happened in our life, like trauma. And this is something that I actually feel is a driver of PCOS, that we might have had a traumatic event happen in our life, and that triggered our PCOS because there's a lot of stress associated with that, and that stress caused our hormones to go out of whack, and then we developed PCOS.
So this is actually quite controversial in the medical field as well. They've not really recognized this as a potential cause, but actually trauma is not what happens to you, right? It's what happens inside of you, how you feel, how your body reacts to it.
Exactly.
Right? So if you're stressed, your hormones are going to be whack. Like I like to call my hormones whack because because they are.
And kind of going off of that means that to someone else, your trauma might not look like much. But it's not about what happened to you. It's how you reacted to it and what effect it had on you.
Yeah.
So, it's not about how intense that trauma seems to the outside world. It might have been very intense to you, regardless of what that specific trauma was, right?
Yeah.
So every trauma is valid.
Every
right?
trauma
That's the
is
point.
valid, and it can happen to you at any time. Like when you're a teen, you're very sensitive to anything that anyone might say to you. What happens at home? Some people don't have very stable environment at home, right? All of these things impact you, how stressed you are, and it might manifest PCOS. So yeah.
So that is what I do as a PCOS coach. So we went on a tangent with trauma, but even addressing mental health can help you alleviate your PCOS symptoms, right?
Yeah.
But we don't think about it in this way. And even when we go and seek guidance from a doctor, it's not very common for us to get this information, if at all, right?
Most doctors say lose 10% of your body weight and you will be fine.
Or get pregnant. Get pregnant
You have
and
no
your
idea
PCOS symptoms
how many
will disappear.
doctors and like random people have told women, like they're not even medical professionals, have they told women, ये problems तो ना शादी के बाद ठीक हो जाती है. And it's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
Like, how can you say शादी के बाद ठीक हो जाती है, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite sad that the lack of information is so much and there's so much taboo. And honestly, this is why I wanted to start this podcast.
Yeah.
That's the main reason. I was like, okay, let's fix this. There's a gap. Let's bridge this gap.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, right? We need as many voices as possible out there sharing this information and reaching as many women as possible. I mean, that's the only way that a change is going to happen in how PCOS is dealt with. And yeah, I'm really excited about this podcast that you have.
Okay, so now comes the surprise, Anushri. It's not actually much of a surprise, okay? But we spoke about how, because of Instagram, there's a lot of information, the right guidance which is reaching out to people. But there's another side to it, okay?
Correct.
And because I keep searching about PCOS, hormonal health, and I work in wellness, I get triggered with a lot of ads. So I'm going to show you one and I'm going to wait. Like, obviously, I'll put it up on the screen for our audience. But I'm going to show you that ad and then I'm going to wait for your reaction on it. Okay.
पॉलिसिस्टिक ओवरी का ट्रीटमेंट बताऊं? दाढ़ी पर बाल आ जाते हैं, पिंपल्स निकल जाते हैं, ये भी इससे गायब हो जाता है. देखो कैसे करना है. ये दोनों हाथ ऐसे ऊपर रखें. घर का कोई भी सदस्य सुबह शाम इस काम को कर ले, पर ज्यादा नहीं है.
I literally got this ad. Can you believe it?
से लेकर
This was an ad.
Yeah.
यहाँ पर बीच में 6 सेकंड के लिए प्रेशर देना और फिर 6 सेकंड के लिए प्रेशर देना. ये 12 बार करना है. और ऊपर भी रिस्ट के पास भी 6 सेकंड का प्रेशर दिया.
Why are there all these men
फिर से 6 सेकंड
I don't know.
just sitting and watching this demonstration?
12 बार यहाँ, 6 सेकंड और 12 बार यहाँ. ये सुबह और शाम करने से 1 से 3 महीने में पीसीओडी मतलब पिंपल्स, पीसीओडी अलग चीज है, लेकिन पिंपल्स,
पीसीओडी अलग चीज है, पिंपल्स और
वीडियो को फैमिली फ्रेंड्स को शेयर करो.
This is very questionable.
And I don't even ads where astrologers are explaining why astrologically they can explain why you have PCOS, okay?
What have they said?
I didn't understand. I don't know much about astrology, but I saw this. This was the second time I got this ad. I was like, I'm going to screen record this.
Oh my God.
And use it for content.
That's so strange.
So now, see, there are women of course, we meet women in Bangalore, Bombay, Delhi, who are aware. But we forget that there are cities, tier 2 cities in India where people have not
access
there is
to that
access.
information.
There is access to knowledge through Instagram.
Yeah.
But Instagram, Google, whatever. But there are two sides to it, right?
And also, it's also a language thing, right?
It's also
so in tier 2, tier 3 cities, they're predominantly going to be speaking whatever the native language is there, or they're speaking Hindi. And I don't know how many, people are out there sharing information who are Hindi speaking, right, about PCOS. So if there's anyone out there and you're inspired, start a page, right?
Please do.
In your native language.
Please
to
do.
reach more women who have PCOS and need access to this information.
Absolutely. I think one more thing is that even people who've started pages sometimes it's not all scientific information.
Yes, correct.
Like
correct.
I could start my own content creator page to talk about PCOS, but I may not have the right set of information because I'm not qualified to do that.
Correct.
Hence, I have you here to talk about it today.
Yeah. I mean, it's a slippery slope, right? But I think the point is just for us to start having more open conversation.
Definitely.
Even if you're not sharing specifically as an expert and an authority on this topic, just within your community, within your friend group, being open about talking about these things that we often don't talk about because we feel very uncomfortable or shameful about it. But it's not shameful. I mean, more often than not, you're not the only one going through that, correct, right? And you won't know if you're the only one until you voice it
out.
And you speak to others about it.
Absolutely. And don't fall for such gimmicks, quacks.
I mean, I think I'm glad that nothing negative was happening to her, but I can easily see how, that's a very slippery slope.
Yeah, and there are alternative treatments, like there's acupuncture, there's homeopathy, there's a lot of all of these things which help with hormonal health or any medical condition, right?
Yeah.
But this is definitely not one.
Not it. Yeah. And I encourage people to seek help from other health experts, right? Other holistic health experts, like you said, whether it's a naturopathic doctor, whether it's an acupuncture doctor, a chiropractor, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Ayurveda. I mean, I think we live in a country where we have access to all of these things, and it's really wonderful. And seek opinions and understand different approaches and see what's aligned with you, and then take steps to make changes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anushri. This, I think, was a great session. I loved having this conversation with you because you know how much I like talking. It was like a coffee chat.
It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me, Ambika, on your wellness mixer. I really enjoyed it, and I'm so happy that you started this and you're taking this up and you're sharing more information about a very important topic.
So I'm sure a lot of you would want to interact with Anushri. So I will let Anushri now tell you more about her page, and if you want to get in touch with her for a consultation, where you can find her.
Thank you, Ambika. So for anyone who's interested in, learning more about the information that I share, you can find me on Instagram at my page, Coach Noosh. It's one word, CoachNush. And over there, if you want to get in touch with me, you can DM me. You can also email me at noosh@coachnoosh.com. I also have a website, coachnoosh.com. So in any of these avenues, you can reach out to me and we can connect. Would love to connect with you and hear your story. And if you're interested in working with me, we can speak more about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Please drop your questions below, where I think Anushri will be answering these on the page as well. So please drop your questions below or any comments that you might have. Stay tuned for the second episode.